Hello, what a pleasure to be with you again for a webinar this time, inspired by the conference that we've been holding back in December, where I've been presenting on the topics of buyers will be queens and kings. I'll be going a bit further than what I've presented during the conference back in December. And the idea today is really to, sharing a vision. So every few years, I've got this kind of presentation when I step back and I try to look into the future on the broader role of procurement. And to do this, I'm going to be sharing with you two scenarios about the future. And out of this, we're going to start discussing how we need to change the logic of how we work within procurement. And then we'll have a whole closing session where you'll be asked to contribute as well, where we'll be talking how can we be acting as role models in this context of the evolution of the world and the industries that surround us. So the two scenarios are here really to, have very polarized vision of the world that help us to understand, some of the very strong direction that are, pushing us to think differently about the future. The role of scenarios in terms of strategy planning, it's exactly that. It's forcing people to think differently by taking them out of, their day-to-day ways of working and putting them suddenly into a different world, the scenario, where they need to invent different ways of approaching things. So yes, these scenarios are very polarized, very extreme, but they're here to force us to look at the future with a different pair of glasses. First scenario is a scenario where we've got, continuous increase in terms of energy prices, where we've got a lot of geopolitical turmoil. What we see at the end is battles between countries. We see some industries moving out of different regions of the world. There will be some lack of investment. Also, as these economic conditions become more challenging, we will be also facing social unrest and people exiles. We've seen that in some countries where young educated people have been leaving their countries to go abroad, for instance. And another big dimension in this scenario is all the impact of climate change. That's a reality now and is going to continue to be a reality, an enduring challenge for everyone with, for instance, water shortages, but also some impact on the social side of things that will also reinforce, this kind of population movement we could have around the world. So that's a scenario where we'll be facing a lot of challenges. And the best way to picture this scenario is this kind of a dystopic picture where it'll be very challenging to gain access to resources. It'd be challenging to find suppliers that can ensure continuity of supply. And yes, buyers in this scenario would be queens and kings, but they would be very important because there's the scavengers. Like during the COVID period, you had some of the automotive company, they were dismantling some washing machines in order to put their hand on some semiconductors, for instance. So this is one option for the future. And I think, a few years ago, it would have looked like a very dystopian, but more and more, we can see some of these elements coming into play in front of us. There's another scenario where, we invest in decarbonizing, we invest in, a smart way of digitalizing, not just our, transforming our Excel sheet into a digital tool, but really digitalizing industries where we have a global rebalancing of activities, multiplying the security of source of supply to gain security, implementing complete circular industry architectures, having a real way across full industries to bring back products at the end of life and extract resources from this product. To do this, we need to implement a lot of data sharing, information sharing between companies, but also systems that will allow everyone to access information. So when the product is at the end of life, the recycler can immediately know where it can be disassembled or where to send it back. This will increase resource productivity. With the new balancing of activities across the world, new social contract can emerge with new jobs, with new contribution to a broader purpose, and maybe we can reach a new utopia. A world that's compelling, where we can work with the resources, the amount of energy we can access in order to satisfy the needs of humanity. If we go in this scenario, well, buyers will be queens and kings. Why? Because this means redefining the architectures of most industries. How work is done, not just between a buyer and a supplier, but across a complete industry. Think of the automotive industry, for instance. If we want to really, move into electric vehicles, if we want to go into circular economy, if we want to go into, some of these big evolutions of that industry, it's not just about improving relationship or the ways of working between one company and the supplier. It is finding the way to transform the architectures, complete architectures of this industry. So very important here, queens and kings, not scavengers, but architects, people that can build a vision, people that can build a view of how the industries of tomorrow could be working very well in a totally different context where, circularity, lower energy consumption, better social inputs can work hands in hands to build a new form of prosperity defined on a new basis in terms of, what satisfies people and what people gain access to. So I got a question for you. What do you see coming between these two scenarios? Maybe you can share your assessment. Which one do you see is the most likely to happen? Which one is, ahead of us? Are you a dystopian? Are you a utopian? I think these are questions we can all answer in ourselves. Oh. So we've got, from what I'm hearing, we've got a dominant response on scenario 2. This is Frederic telling me about this. You got some more information about the numbers? Okay, we've got very similar response compared to what we had in the conference. We had, I need to move to the other slide. During the conference, we had I'm rounding things a little bit up, but 40% of people thinking we're going on towards scenario 1, and 60% of people saying we are moving towards scenario 2. Apparently today, 43 on one hand, 57 on the other hand. Okay, but yeah, I think the big point is we should be ready for big changes. We shouldn't be anticipating that things will just be a new normal very quickly, but we will see some of this very radical evolution coming into our way. So, in that context, what does it really mean for procurement? And here, I think, I'm going to be focusing mainly on the architect perspective, but you know, it's also valid for the dystopian view of the scavengers. The big change is for many, many, many years, procurement job was defined by the needs of the internal stakeholders that were bringing the voice of the consumers. We've been going through this, boom of economics where there were more products, more services, more this and more that, and companies, needed to develop these new products and services. So they were bringing to procurement requirements, and we were supposed to go and get these different components, these different resources in order to, build this product and services that consumers would be benefiting from. But today, what I've showed to you is something very different. It is the foundations of our industry that are changing. So the future is going to be less driven by, the consumption side, but more driven by the evolution of some of the fundamental and most basic industry we have. And these industries are going through transition to, electrification in some case, circular transition, or, transition in terms of what is produced where in the world. The new geographies of energy production, of semiconductor production. So all of these are industry transition that are going to shape the work of procurement. So we're very used to think about procurement being a 5-step type of process or a 7-step market, and then we go into building a strategy, taking actions, implementation, and learning. But that's the old way where consumption and demand dictates the evolution of the world. Today, we need to reverse the flow. We need to act as true entrepreneurs. We've been saying this for many years, but here we have the industry changes, we have the condition with this transition of industries where it's no more an option. We need to be these entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs, call them the way you want, that are going to bring opportunities from outside and getting our companies to change their ways of working on the supply side because we see opportunities. It doesn't mean it's not connected to any kind of, business goals. Your company might be, defining ambitions in terms of circular economy. It might be defining ambitions in terms of the social impact, in terms of, these elements. So it's not like we forget everything about, the strategy and the alignment with the broader strategy. But in that context, we look at how industries can evolve, the supply markets and the broader ecosystem around them could be evolving into the future. And we need to sense the opportunities that can make a difference. Sometimes we can even lead on the implementation of these opportunities. Sometimes we can harvest the benefits from these opportunities. Sometimes we can, extend what's done in one sector, bring it in our sector. And then we will be acting as a knowledge hub because we have this vision of the change. We have the vision of what could be done into the future. And we need to transform procurement, not as a response to a need, but as a knowledge hub, as a place that can share knowledge, insights, foresights about what can make a difference for the company for the future, looking at what's happening within these industries. And from this, we will have to make an act of proposition. We will have to sense the right time to go to the business and say, hey, the world's evolving. This gives us the option to do this, to do that, and to do that. Which one do you want to pick? So really acting as, a force that makes proposal outside, sometime even of the strategy process, sometime as part of your category strategy process. But, category strategies won't always be fitting nicely with all these opportunities as well. So sometimes we'll have to break a little bit, these boundaries to make some of these proposals. I'll give you an example. One of my students I was working with 8 months ago identified opportunities to, attach information to a product they were selling to their clients. And then by attaching that information, this was enabling the possibility of informing the user of the product of a number of things, but also implementing the circular economy. So it was easing sending back the product that was produced by a supplier in order to repair it whenever that was needed. And she said, oh, we can even go further. We can even have another step, which would be, instead of selling the product to our clients, we could be renting that product to the clients, and they could pay for, having access to that product. And we would have all the flow of information to make this happen. She had to wait for the right time to get the right people into the room. And she went into the meeting saying, here are some of the options. The response was, hey, implement this digital product passport for the product in order to get better information to facilitate the return flow, for instance. But then maybe it's not the best product to start to rent it instead of selling it. We should have another meeting in 6 months in order to have a proper strategy about this. Now you're part of the team that should be working on that. So we're acting as people who are coming to the business, and we're making proposal to, even change the way some of the product can be positioned onto the market. And then, of course, we've got the implementing and the learning. When we've made proposal, we need to help with the transformation and the implementation of the change. So 5 new steps in some ways that can help us, to bring this industry transition to a reality for our companies. Now, how do we do that? We as people in procurement, this requires us to become these entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, opportunity seekers, people capable of putting options on the table and coming up with, new ways of doing things. And the only way to do that is changing our behaviors, changing our attitude. And if we look at all the tools, if we look at all the best practice, that'll probably be still valid. We'll still be needing, TCO analysis, TVO. We still need, some of all of these tools when we will be implementing these changes. But the one thing that will be different is the way we will behave, the way we will, drive the change inside the organization, act as entrepreneurs. So, we're still in the early days of putting that into some frameworks, and I've been already, playing with different ways of describing, these changes of profile for the buyers and what type of capabilities and behaviors they could be having. I'll be sharing you a simple version today. First is, what type of opportunities are we pushing to the business? What was interesting during the conference back in December, within the room, when we asked people, have you been pushing like at least one or more of these type of initiatives to the business that are really supportive of industry transition? 65% of the people in the room said yes. We are starting to actively, at least, go to the business and tell them it's not just a response to a need. It is an opportunity we have on the market side, on the supply side. Consider it, look at it. There's great opportunities there. It's not something that's just done as part of a supplier selection. It's something broader, something where we actively, out of the classic procurement cycle, push for new solutions. So 65% of the people at the conference said, yeah, at least in my organization, we had at least, one of this type of push we were making to the business. And most of the topics that were, suggested during the conference were the one you have in green, going from the circular economy to digitalization and AI. So, this is just to give you some of the examples. I'm not going to go back into details into each of these, but I wanted to mention, and at the end, we're going to build a coat of arms, and, you can put on your coat of arms maybe one of these themes or the things you want that you want to be a role model for. Okay. So trying to keep things simple, I think, I'm representing a little bit the world of procurement around 2 dimensions. One dimension is, the geographies of our value chain. So on one hand, on the top, we've got the stakeholder, the user, the client side. And at the bottom, we've got more the, the supplier and the ecosystem side. So fairly classic perspective about, demand and supply. And then what I have between the left and the right is on the left, the anticipation, and on the right, the implementation with this logic of, being an actor of the change and of this transformation. And I've positioned like 4 kind of, animals that could represent your personal style, your personal orientation, and a personal area where you want to be a role model. We've got 4 of them. The strategic whole, that's kind of, anticipating more on the stakeholder, user, client side. The intelligence beaver, that's anticipating more on the ecosystem supplier side. We've got on the change the innovation fox, all the adaptability and bringing the transformation into reality. And I've put in the middle, some of the, by definition, leaders of the organization, but also the informal leaders of the organization that are acting as transformation eagles for procurement as part of this evolution. I'm absolutely not saying that, this is invalidating everything that's done in terms of organization, skills, and stuff like that already in procurement. What I'm saying is we need to have on top these behaviors, these ways of positioning ourselves that can really support acting as an entrepreneur of this industry transformation. So what do they mean? Let's look at each of them. When we think of all, strategic all, the all is the kind of animal that have this can see through the night. So even if there is a lot of, fog and darkness, the whole is able to look ahead, have this wisdom, strategic thinking, and very importantly, can act as the right moment. Sometimes procurement, we see an opportunity with a supplier, we push it internally. The whole is someone who looks at all the conditions, is able to put the case for a change, understand the long-term priorities of the business, understand the problems of the clients, the user, the stakeholder, has a very good understanding of the unmet needs, not just for today, but for tomorrow. Not the specifications, the unmet needs. What are the key strategic problems that can prevent the company from moving forward? These kind of things. But also having that ability to put together on the table some new options with a mix of short and longer term opportunities. There are people who are attending some of the most important meetings of the stakeholders, and they voice their view well beyond, purely supplier matters. They give a strategic perspective on what industry evolutions can bring to the business in terms of opportunities, sometimes risk as well. Let's go next to the intelligence beaver. The beaver is really this symbol of diligence, and it's animal that can construct environment that can support the complete community. And this is the role we need. We need very much in this industry transition. These are people that can go and look deep into the supply chain, deep into ecosystems, look in adjacent market, not just being like focused on a single category, but looking in adjacencies and being able to see a bigger picture and identify what's changing, what's evolving. Like the person I'd mentioned, like saying, hey, you know, there's new tools about creating a digital product passport you can associate to a product, and this will allow us to share information with the user, but also with the supplier. We could be using that capability that we now have on the market. And it's not enough to have that knowledge, but the intelligence beaver is building that environment where we procurement, we continuously share information about what's evolving. Regularly, every quarter, we have meetings where we bring an expert, where we bring one of the big suppliers who's sharing a roadmap, we bring some of the new ventures, we bring someone from another industry, and continuously we contribute to the community of decision makers around us, giving them the insight, giving them the ideas that can help make a difference. So we can't just jump and say, hey, this is the new solution. We need to feed the business, position procurement as this knowledge hub that's going to be feeding the business on what's going to make a difference. This means organizing community meetings with the stakeholders, suppliers, and experts. This is also sometime we will need, and raw materials, I've said that in other webinars, we need to build database of supplier capabilities, raw materials, you know, in order to be able to create the agility, not based on quick response, but deep knowledge that will power this quick response. So we need to have our own tools to make sure that, you know, that intelligence is readily accessible anytime and can be transferred from one buyer to another. And also, very important for me is the intelligence beaver is also the type of people that can document the lessons learned and can influence network by, you know, sharing the input of the stories, demonstrating the depths of change that we bring to some industries, setups and architectures, and then, you know, contributing to demonstrate this power of change. The next one is the innovation fox. So that's the one on the right. Some of you might have been joining many of my webinars on the topic of innovation. I never see innovation, people dealing with innovation are people that are in a strategic role. I see them as people that are in a very operational role. Innovation is about implementing significant, you know, changes by leveraging capabilities from the ecosystem to respond to, you know, the unmet needs that we need to address in the future. It is about implementation. It is about getting things done. It is about driving the change. And sometimes the innovation fox, you know, shouldn't just be looking at the biggest supplier in the panel as the source of these new capabilities that can make a difference. To solve some of tomorrow's problem, we will need to do something different than just looking at existing supplier. We need to have that curiosity. We need to have that quick adaptability that will be making a difference on the portfolio of capabilities we'll be bringing to the business, the portfolio of resources that we will be assembling. So we'll be finding unexpected suppliers or group of suppliers. Like during the COVID period, you know, some of the companies that were, you know, making consumer goods product, you know, like the things you put in your hair to clean them, suddenly they were producing, you know, some of the components for the test. That's a capability you've been finding It's an unexpected supplier that has been able to contribute to something very different than what they do on a regular basis. So what does it need? This innovation fox. It needs to be able to bring multiple parties to a table having the conversation. Multiple parties, not just being stakeholders, but sometimes multiple suppliers or associations, NGOs, research centers. Maybe having a university working on AI models specialized for an industry, working together with some of your digital tool supplier. So you can build something quite unique with your own data, the digital solution, telecom solution from two suppliers, plus that university. And putting these things, for a good use of the business by driving change through engaging multiple parties. Sometimes there will be only one and it's better, the less the easier. But, sometimes to create something a bit exceptional, we'll have to dare to go beyond, have more than one player at the table. So we need to facilitate this event, this workshop, and we need to be real leaders for the transformation. That's what the Innovation Fox is doing. Going around running, but when you see a fox, you feel like following that fox. So that's very operational leader that drives people through change. The last one is the transformation eagle. So the transformation eagle is the fourth area of role model. And there's two characteristics for me important about the eagle is that, they can see the big picture. They have this very broad view and they're fearless. And I think the fearless for me is very important because we need to step up the ambitions. We need to make a big difference. We need CPOs, we need procurement managers, we need, people who are stepping up on the ambitions. Do not fear to make proposal that will be rejected. Go not just in what's being asked in terms of requirement, but propose something different. That level of ambition, if we don't make it happen, well, just forget about what I've said. There'll be no queens and there will be no kings. That's absolutely essential. And that ambition needs to have that bigger vision and needs to be aligned with a different, sense of purpose. Being able to articulate all the benefits that we can have by mobilizing different capabilities from outside to deliver something that's good for the company, but also good for the final clients, good for the society, and good for what's surrounding us. We need people that can really, sponsor some of this project. Not just like, push for their preferred solution. Be able to put, multiple options on the table and get the involvement of decision makers to think around that. Communicate and shape, some of these product proposition. But also, some of these people are here to share learning, help work across categories, and coach others within the procurement organization. So we level up this level of ambitions and we do bigger things that can make a difference in terms of the evolution of our industries. So that's, the four kind of roles I see that will be important. Do we need to be an eagle? Do we need to be a fox? Do we need to be a beaver? No, we don't need to be these animals every time of the day. Some of us can be all of them. Some of us can be one of them, two of them. But it's important to get a sense of where is it, that we can bring the biggest difference? Where is it that we commit to be a role model for the rest of the organization? Unless we drive things by showing the examples, none of this change is going to happen and there'll be no queens and kids. We need to act as the leaders at every level that drives followers to take actions and to think differently. We need to get to this logic of virality in terms of change of behavior by stepping up what we all do.